Good morning and welcome to Bible study time. It's Sunday school hour at Calvary Baptist Church, and I know I've got some students coming. They're a little late, but that's okay. They'll join us silently. They're pretty good about that. So we started a new unit today, and the unit is entitled "More Than a Sidekick: Serving Alongside Others." And the Bible is full of um, stories of we have the main character, and then on top of that we have other characters or other supporting cast, and so that's what we're going to look at in the next few um, weeks up until 1st of September. We're going to look at more than a sidekick. These who serve alongside the main character in the scripture were important people. They were credible people. And we all need those kind of people. We need somebody who stands alongside us when we feel like we're going it alone. Not a good feeling. And we need people who will say, "Will help," or "Tell us what to do," or "I'm with you." And I might not be able to do what you do, but I'll sit on the sidelines and I'll pray. And that's what we need, isn't it? So anyway, just making sure I know where I am there in perspective. Okay, so today, the very first one, we look at Aaron, who was the older brother of Moses, and Hur, Hur, Aaron and Hur. And this is just an interesting story. They had been in Egypt in bondage and slavery, and God called Moses to go and be the deliverer, to be the one who helped them be delivered by God. And Moses, if you recall in Exodus 3, said, "I can't talk. I'm not a good spokesperson." And God said, "It's okay. Your older brother Aaron, he'll do the talking. We'll make Aaron do the talking." And so they worked as a team. So Moses had worked with his brother before this incident, but now here we are in Exodus chapter 17. We've gotten out of Egypt and we're wandering in the wilderness, and we're in this place when turn that down just there. That's even better. When God begins to speak and God begins to call out to teach Moses what he wants him to do. I'm going to do that a little bit like that. There we go. That's even a bit square. That's better. Okay. So, Moses was the God-appointed leader, and he needed help, though. He couldn't do it all by himself. If you'll recall, there was, about 1 million people, or about 1 million men, which means they've estimated somewhere between 2 and 3 million people overall that were out there in the wilderness. Folks, you can't pack that many people in a small area, and they were out living in tents. They were out just over the hillsides, out in the wilderness there, out in the desert, and so really there's a lot of them, and they took up a lot of space. They needed a lot of food. They had a lot of demands along the way that needed to be addressed and taken care of. So anyway, I'm going to move that over here just a little bit there, even more. So anyway, in the process, here they were, and they were on this journey out in the wilderness. And Moses, his father-in-law, is about to give him some great instructions. But even before that, in chapter 17, they have a problem. The problem stems from a group of people who lived in the southern area there along the Red Sea in the north. And here they are. They've crossed the Red Sea. They're over here in the wilderness. And this group of people was called the Amalekites. The path to freedom isn't always easy. Just read our history, the revolution, other revolutions of other nations. The path to freedom is not an easy one. And so you really do have to journey along and make sure that you get in the process along the way. And it takes lots of people who are on board and ready to go with that. So we see that here they are, and they're out in the wilderness. And while they are trying to figure out what God's going to do with them next, or how they need to move, how they need to proceed, along come this group called the Amalekites. Amalek was their ancestor. Amalek was a son this right? I think Amalek was no Timnah was. Let me get this right. Amalek, he was the son of Eliphaz, and uh, Eliphaz has the son. Timnah was his concubine. Eliphaz was the son of Esau, or the founder of the Edomites, Esau. So remember, Abraham had Jacob. Abraham had Isaac, and of course he had the illegitimate son Ishmael. But out of his descendants, then he had Isaac, and Isaac had the twins Esau and then Jacob. And Jacob was the one that God chose for his line to descend through. So Esau then, Edom, the Edomites, Esau, one of his sons was Eliphaz, and Eliphaz had a son um, um, named Amalek, and Amalek was then Esau's grandson. So you kind of put that in historical or numerical perspective, then you realize, there's Jacob and Esau. They were twin brothers, and then Jacob had the 12 tribes. He had Joseph was the one that God chose then to work his line through, and Jacob died in Egypt. Joseph, of course, was sold into slavery in Egypt, and that's how the Israelites ended up there. And then so Jacob died there. Joseph died there, and several years went by. I think, if I remember, about from the time Joseph went there to the time that they came out, it was about 400 years. So it was quite a season. It was quite a time. And several years passed, but they were distant cousins, these people, because one line was out of Esau, the Edomites, and then the Amalekites were a grandson to him. And then there was the Israelites. You recall that God changed Jacob's name from Jacob to Israel when he wrestled with God on his way back to the land of Canaan. Anyway, I tell you all that just to say, here's where they were. And they were a ferocious bunch, the Amalekites. And so they were kind of a thorn in their side a lot. They were kind of a cumbersome group. And God told Saul to destroy them, just get rid of them. And he didn't do it. So David fought with them too. And it wasn't until Hezekiah. It wasn't until Hezekiah was king several generations later that they finally got rid of this nemesis, finally got rid of these people. Well, so all of that I say to then jump in at Exodus 17, verse 8, what talks about this conflict. And it says, at Rephidim, Amalek came and fought against Israel. Now, probably wasn't Amalek himself. It was the people, or the Amalekites, the people of Amalek, came and fought against Israel. Moses said to Joshua, select some men for us and go fight against Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the hilltop with God's staff in my hand. Remember the importance of God's staff when Moses threw it down at the burning bush here in Sinai, in the same area. Remember the importance of it when he took it, and it was what God used to remind the people of his presence with them. Remember the importance of it when he parted the Red Sea and the people crossed on dry land. So remember the importance of that. So Moses says, okay, God's going to use this symbol, this tool, one more time to prove to you that God is with us. I'm going to go on the mountain or up on the hill, and I'm going to stand there and I'm going to raise it up and hold it up. And you're going to go down, Joshua. You're going to pick all these good fighting guys. You're going to go down and you're going to fight the Amalekites. And so that's what they did on the next day. It says in verse 10, Joshua did as Moses had told him and fought against Amalek while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. So here's three people that were helpers, or that were sidekicks, or that were people that Moses had chosen to help him in this task. First, we have Joshua, who he said, go get some fighting men. And I think there's a lot involved in that. I think that he had to think about, how many do I need? What's it going to take? what kind of skills do they need to have? What do they need to do? What needs to be the working that they're going to have? And then he went and selected them, chose these men, and then they went down in the valley to fight the Amalekites. Wow. Moses and Aaron and Hur. Aaron, he'd already had as his helper in many things, but Hur was another guy. Who was Hur? Well, Hur was I think if I remember this right, he was related to Caleb. Caleb, who was there, was Joshua and Caleb were the two that were when they went to spy out the promised land, they came back with a good report. Joshua and Caleb were the only two out of that generation that got to go into the promised land 40 years after they wandered in the wilderness. Hur was a son of Caleb. He was also the grandfather of Bezalel, who was the artisan when they constructed the tabernacle. Bezalel was the young man that was put in charge of the metal crafting and the stonework that they used in this wilderness tabernacle. So that's kind of where he was. So here's what's going to happen. Joshua and the men are going to go in the valley and they're going to fight the Amalekites. Moses and Aaron and Hur are going to go up on the hill, and he's going to raise the staff, the rod of God, and God's going to give them victory. God's going to watch over them because they weren't fighting people. They weren't really warriors, not that they didn't know how to defend themselves. I'm sure they did, but they just didn't really know a lot about battle. They had to learn that kind of thing. So everybody did just exactly what they were told to do. Isn't it interesting how it takes all kinds to make something happen? It doesn't just happen with one person. There's a lot of people in the background who cause things to be. And as a leader, if I think that it's all on me, I'm pretty crazy to think that. We come to church on Sunday, and there's a lot of people involved in worship. There's a lot of things that we do to teach Sunday school, and there's a lot we do through the week to cause God's church to be effective in our community. It takes us all. And I think this is a good series, or this is going to be a good unit, because we're going to look at those helpers who walked alongside those who needed strength and help. Okay, so that's the first section of this story. And the lesson is that you just need to be prepared to be helpful as you're needed. It's a good thing that if you're called on, say, I'll help, I'll do it. The old saying was, if somebody says frog, you need to say, how high? How high do you want me to jump? How many people do you want me to teach to jump with me? What do I need to do? Well, moving on to the second section then. And it talks about being supportive by doing what you can. If you read this story, if you remember it, you'll know what comes next. It's Exodus 17, verses 11 through 13. So you get the picture, Joshua and the people and the soldiers, the warriors, the people are down fighting the Amalekites. Moses, Aaron, and Hur are up on the hill. It was a day-long battle. It lasted all day. So here they are up there, and Moses' arms got really tired. I don't blame him. My arms don't, do what they used to do. And if you've seen people, I don't know, the American Ninja Warrior or whatever, and they get out there and they're hanging on something and they just can't hang on forever. They just let go, or they can't go to the next move to do whatever because they're exhausted. They're depleted. They're tired. They run out of juice. And so here's Moses. He's up on the hill. Well, he wasn't a young man. He was 40 when he left Egypt the first time. He was 80 when he went back to deliver God's people. And so here now they are out in the wilderness. He's 80 plus years old. He's not a young man. So they're up on the hill. Moses holding up the staff. And sometime in the battle in the morning there, his arms get tired. Listen to what it says. While Moses held up his hands, Israel prevailed. But whenever he put his hand down, the Amalekites prevailed. When Moses' hands grew heavy, they took a stone and put it under him. So what did they do? Well, Aaron and Hur knew they were there for a purpose. And so they went and got a big rock for Moses to kind of lean against and kind of sit on, like a big bar stool kind of thing, lean on and sit on, so his legs could have a little breather, have a little break. And then it says that he sat down on it. And then it says Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on one side and one on the other, so that his hands remained steady until the sun went down. They just held his hands up. I guess they could have gotten a bigger rock and put one underneath one of them. But no, they were there to help. They were there to be supportive and do whatever they could. And so they got him a place to lean up against and sit on. So he was still standing. And then they got his arms up to where he could continue to be a symbol that God's power and strength was with them. One commentator said the raising of his hands seems to have been a form of prophetic symbolism, a symbolic gesture indicating that the Lord had delivered the Amalekites into the hand of Israel. Often in the Old Testament, hands are the meaning of mediating power. We lay on hands, or when they would pass the blessing, they would hold their hands and give them the blessing. So there's an authority, there's a power in that with the hands. When we worship, we raise up lifted hands to the Lord, and we're saying, "Fill us, Lord. Give us what we need." When we lift a hand, I'll get it down where you can see it. When we lift a hand up in praise, an open-faced hand, we're saying, "God, we're not coming at you with a fist. We're coming at you with praise and adoration. We're coming to receive from you. We're coming to symbolically stand in the glow of your glory and your presence." And so that's what we are doing. Support as you can. So the battle wasn't quickly won. It took the day, but the support tactic worked. And when the day was over, Israel was victorious. The people of God had won. They took an intentional action just when Moses needed it most. That's what good helpers do. That's what good workers do, is just when you need it most, they step right in and say, "Come on now, let's go. We're going to win. We're going to do it. It's all good." And then we jump over to Exodus chapter 24. If you're thinking about this, you'll recall the 10 Commandments came in Exodus 20. So in Exodus 18, we were in 17, now we're in 18. In 18, it's when Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came and said to him, "You're spending way too much time judging the people. You got to break this down. You got to divide it up," which I think Moses knew how to do. He just hadn't done it. He just hadn't taken the time to do it. And that's why with a lot of people, with a lot of leaders, we kind of know what we ought to do. We just don't always take the initiative to do it. That's, whether it's some laziness, whether it's some procrastination, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes we're just not always prompt in getting done what we need to do. And so Jethro, his father-in-law, prompted him to do that. Then we jump over to 24. Moses has already been up on the mountain. He's already heard from God. God's already told him all the 10 Commandments. And so it says then in verse 13, Moses arose with his assistant Joshua and went up to the mountain of God. He told the elders, "Wait here for us until we return to you. Aaron and Hur are here with you. Whoever has a dispute should go to them." And Moses went up the mountain. The cloud covered it. So no matter what's going on, you should be dependable. No matter how great the task or how small your assignment, you should be dependable. And they were. It's interesting how you don't hear a lot of their names in this process. We hear Aaron off and on. Matter of fact, when it gets over to chapter 32, you probably know what's going to happen. Moses is up there getting the tablets still, and he's learning all this stuff that God is telling him about the law and about the governing of the people. And he's been up there 40 days and 40 nights. Is he ever coming back? Probably not. "Oh, we should have all died in Egypt. What are we doing out here in the wilderness to die? They'll never know we're here." And I mean, there's millions of them, but they'll never know we're here. And they're going on and on about this stuff. And so they talk Aaron into letting them construct a golden calf. We hear about Aaron there, don't we? But and that's not a good thing. That was not good at all. But we never hear about them much, except for in these instances when the assignment was important and they were up to the challenge and they did it. Joshua was kind of the lookout. He went on up the mountain farther with Moses. He was kind of the lookout. The elders, we don't know if these were people then by this point that he had appointed under Jethro's leadership, but he told the elders to wait here for us until we return to you. That just meant don't go wandering off. Just stay here like you were. When I come back, just be like you were. Moses went up the mountain. Joshua was kind of the lookout, but Aaron and Hur were in charge of what was going on. Now, I don't know that Hur went on and agreed with some of the things that they were doing with the golden calf and all that stuff. But Aaron let him do it. And that was not good leadership on his part. He wasn't real faithful to do what he was supposed to do. Well, so what can we learn about this? We learn that if you're called upon, you need to be present when you're needed, and you need to be willing to respond to the directions that you're given. You also need to be supportive and willing to do whatever you can, no matter how small it might seem. And then you also need to prove that you can be depended on. I think that that's some good lessons for us to learn out of this. The kingdom of God on earth will not come unless we do our part and are ready to serve when we are called upon. It makes a difference. So, all right. Well, God bless y'all. Bye.